Utah team, the home team, you got to call them a little bit of the favorites because they're used to these conditions, used to this altitude. They train together quite frequently. This is a side that started training in January. They went 3 days a week after school in preparation for Las Vegas. When they got a little bit later in the season, they added in both Friday and Saturday night trainings. They were training 10 o'clock until midnight at your home, the U. They were at the indoor football facilities Friday and Saturday nights asking high schoolers to give up their social lives 10 p.m. to midnight.
Wow. Yeah, you know what? I remember doing that in college, though.
In college, but high school.
I know. Well, they've got more energy in high school.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of them have to have their driver's licenses too. I know there are some players here that come from as far as Snow Canyon, 4.5 hours away. We have other players coming from Orem and Provo, so 20 minutes or so from what I understand. Double check my Utah geography with you, Matt.
No, the 10 to midnight, we used to do that in college playing rugby at Utah when we were kind of second-class citizens to football, right? But now it's a different story now that the game has evolved and grown, and so we've got a lot more respect, having won a lot of games and been competitive in the sport. So, I respect what these young teenagers are doing, and I'm also a little bit envious, wouldn't you say? And they've got a lot more than what we ever had, and it's good to see because they're better athletes than we ever were.
Well, not to get all too back in my day, but back in my day, there wasn't even a U19 Girls All-American team. So I was sitting there. I started college when I was 17 and had a couple years where I would have been eligible to play U19 rugby still as a college athlete. But it didn't exist. And so now we have all these opportunities, U17s, U19s, different All-American programs. All of these camps hosted by a wide variety of organizations. It is, I'm jealous. What could have been? But, I've got a 6-year-old son, so he can grow up in the system and see what he might be able to do.
Hey,
build him into a rugby player.
Right? We laid the groundwork.
Exactly. Speaking of laying groundwork here, it is Utah with the early lead. They are up 5-0 over this Rocky Mountain Rebel side. So speaking again of this Utah side and their dedication to the program, training up, 5 times a week when they were prepping. They went to the Las Vegas Invitational. They played in the Victoria Sevens recently. They also went over and did a tour of Europe. They played in the United World Games. They were the first ever American side to go. They won the tournament, and they didn't have a single try scored against them.
Yeah, they were incredible, and the boys team as well.
Yes,
the boys team won.
The boys team did quite well. The boys team actually knocked out their other boys team in the semifinals. So they took first, and third. We have another try here from Utah, but some fantastic players. Their coach, Orlando Pillow, he's done a great job. I got to observe him at training, the way that he speaks and interacts with the players. And I told them at practice, I was most impressed by their catch-pass skills.
Yeah,
they are
great
so
fundamentals,
quick.
and he focuses on that a lot. It's all about the fundamentals, especially at this age. It should be, right? If you can master those. Well, as an old friend used to say, you can't have fun without fundamentals.
Well, I think the crowd favorites here enjoying that conversion kick as we see the Utah team go up 12-0 over the Rocky Mountain Rebels. So again, the second game of the day for Rocky Mountain, a team that's also in their first year of existence, coming and combining from multiple high schools in Colorado. A lot of players that have crossed over from soccer. There's players that have played rugby for their own home clubs, but the first year that they've done this kind of traveling touring squad with the Rocky Mountain side. They have a men's team that's here as well. So looking forward to see what they can do. A couple of pairs of siblings on the team. Of course, their coach's daughter's on the team too. And a couple of bright spots. They did come up when they played earlier in the day against Upright. They were pinned back in their own 22 for much of the first half. Wow. And the second half came up with some tries, got their good go forward. But here it is. That is Kat. Nope, I'm sorry. I'm getting the wrong name here. I thought I saw a jersey number. We'll just confirm that.
Number 9.
Number 9, I was right. It was Kat Stowers. I knew I recognized that running. All right, so Kat Stowers, she's a tournament poster girl.
She is.
She's the one on that website there wearing her red, white, and blue Utah Lions gear. Kat Stowers, a phenomenal player. She's actually got a couple cousins on the team here. Charity Tenney as well.
Yeah.
And Boots Aspinall. We have got a couple of unique nicknames with this Utah Lions side as well. We'll see her when she's out there. Spiff. I told her she had to tell me.
Oh, look at that boot. Oh, just wide, though. Just wide.
Yep.
Good kick. That's a tough one on the corner.
It is. It's something that you think would be more favorable for a left-footed kicker, but we've seen some of the left-footed kickers not being able to quite make that angle either. So, people practicing little skills and little things that can get you onto a team. If you can kick off with both feet, which is
that's impressive.
What New
Johnny
Zealand women
style.
do. You'll see them step out of the kick, so they'll be set off and look like they're clearly going right. And then the kicker for the New Zealand women's 7 side, she'll step out, she'll go the other way, and it gives them advantage. And when you have the speed of a Portia Woodman and people out there, it's a huge advantage. Here, Utah getting a little cheeky. They're going just 10, a little bit of a bounce, seeing if Rocky Mountain maybe perhaps knocks on the ball, and not in the kick of his good hands. Still going backwards here with the ball. So Rocky Mountain still able to keep the ball alive, going through a couple phases of play.
Playing a bit of a softer defense in the corners. A bend, not break. Fairly traditional.
But this is a team we did see adjust, as we were alluding to earlier. In the halftime of that upright game, they went from just being inside, pinned back inside their 22 the entire first half, to opening up and scoring a try in the second half of action against upright. So Coach Darlene doing a great job. Their captains, Ivy Richards, Carson Hahn, and Selena Tuilipa. They competed in the Open Division in the Las Vegas Invitational. This Utah Lions side had their first tournament in Las Vegas. They lost to Atavist and they lost to BC, but they beat Upright, they beat Rhino, they beat the Minnesota Tundra, and Auckland Marist from New Zealand. So not a bad showing for their first tournament, and they've clearly built from there.
Wow, absolutely.
In the Victoria Sevens, they lost to the Maple Leafs, so to the Canada Developmental Sevens team in the final of the tournament. Along the way, they beat BC in the semifinal there as well. And then when they went to Europe, they were all over Austria, Germany, and Italy, playing in those United Role games. And quite a lot to look forward to. So here we see a scrum just in front of our commentary booth. That's going to be Kat Stowers from Utah with the put-in. And then worth noting as well, we just spoke with the Rhino coach, with Coach Amy, mentioning that she's got a short roster with 9 boys. This Rocky Mountain team, unfortunately, down to just 10 for the tournament. Nina Falmasoli suffering an injury to her knee, and Gloria Wynn not cleared by her doctor for participation this weekend. So 10 players going to get a lot of time, and it's Utah with a break, so it doesn't matter how many players are in front of her. Fantastic run upfield.
Just really getting after it, playing a really go-get-it style of rugby, right? Being proactive.
Yeah, and that was Alex Cedric with the try there. She is one of 2 players on their team that are actually already graduated from high school. So this being a U19 tournament, they are allowed to have their players. I mean, she just graduated this spring. I know they're 2 seniors. Both were looking at Central Washington. One of them committed, one of them still kind of a little bit up in the air. But Alex Cedric there, Spiff, as she is known to the team, and I think most of her fans would know back home.
On the flip side, on the boys team of the Lions, Keegan Barnes had just committed to Central Washington as well. So that'll be fun. A little hotbed at CW up in Ellensburg, Washington.
They do. And Keegan actually got a little bit of a special waiver for this tournament. He graduated high school last year, but just turned 19 2 days ago.
So he did get
the waiver. So he fell in
under
under the age guidelines with the high school, and they allowed him to play up at Victoria in the sevens up there. And then Canada apparently called back down and said, hey, we got a player in the same situation. Will you let him play? And they said, sure. And then Utah realized it is their biggest nemesis on this Canadian team. So there is a big redhead we need to look for that has just been a thorn in the side of the Utah Lions elite team. So when they match up, that'll be a little bit of a rivalry, and they'll both have their special super seniors, if you will. Coming into halftime now, Utah Lions with a healthy lead of 25 now. I think that might be a little bit more. There were a couple good kicks out there. We'll get a score verification from our friends, the referees. And meantime, here at halftime, we'll give you a couple thanks to our sponsors, notably Atavist. Multiple teams in the tournament doing fantastic camps for the sport of rugby. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
How's it going? How are you doing? Maybe I should. You're not streaming the girl? You should. You should invite me in and say, hey, you can get Buffalo. Hey, we swapping.
All right, back for the second half of action here in the North American Invitational Sevens Elite Girls U18 bracket. We have the Rocky Mountain Rebels wearing green and black, kicking off to the Utah Lions wearing the blue and white. Utah up 22-0, a score correction from earlier. I knew there was a good kick on one of those conversions in there, so thank you to our referees for confirming the score. That is referee Derek in the middle wearing the pink shirt. We've seen these pink shirts from time to time. A big initiative by Try On Rugby to help grow the game of youth rugby and get more girls involved. Fantastic work out of our national office. Our youth development officer, Kurt Weaver. Every state, well, nearly every state, has their own state-based rugby organizations and youth development officers committed to growing the game. I actually heard a story about how one of the parents from this Utah Lions side, it was actually Eric Swap, who is going to be coaching their men's elite team, found out his son's school needed a PE teacher. And he said, I'll do it. I'm going to do rugby though. And he's been going 3 times a week and just volunteering because they said, well, we can't pay. He said, no, the payments, we get to grow rugby. So they're doing as much as they can in the school. Here, a great break by Utah, but a fantastic tackle by Rocky Mountain. Get up, girl. You know, in sevens, it's unforgiving. So these players, if they're laying on the ground for a while after getting tackled or after tackling, they're leaving holes on the field. And that's why our old USA coach, Rick Suggett, used to love a test called the flip-flop. So we hear about the yo-yo, which is this big conditioning endurance test. And he did a different version of the flip-flop, which involved multiple points on the field, sprinting, up, down, rolling over. And realizing that if it takes a team a second longer, 2 seconds longer to get up from the ground in a full game of sevens with the amount of tackles there are, you could have minutes of time wasted collectively over the teams.
Absolutely.
How's that for stats?
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, you are a wealth of knowledge. You're an encyclopedia.
Oh, just a rugby nerd.
Utah punching in another try, putting it 27-0. Awaiting the kick here.
And that was Liz Jepson with the kick. She is their player from Snow Canyon, making that 4+ hour drive to come to all these practices that they have with the Utah Lions.
She made that look easy. She made that look easy.
Yeah?
She's playing really well.
And the kick just wide. So again, you know, when you look at kicks, and here's science. You know, it matters, math and science. With a little bit of physics and geometry with angles. So geometry with the angle, physics with where you're going to kick the ball at what point in the pressure. Look it up. Maybe some of you guys can do a college project on that and have that be your rugby thesis. Yeah, in addition with the scores.
Addition with the scores.
And our language skills here. You know, if we expand this tournament and have it be a true North American Invitational, get some teams from Mexico, I will bust out my Spanish.
See.
Yeah. It's always a good trick when you're playing against teams in my career, playing against like Argentina and Chile and calling for the ball and be like, pelota, pelota, playing against the other teams, because if they hear Spanish, they might pass it to you. We did that in French too.
Pelota, pelota.
Dámelo.
Dámela. Pasame la pelota.
And that's what Utah was trying to say about a forward pass there. So it's going to be a scrum to Rocky Mountain. And thank you, Rocky Mountain. Actually, just got an update with their players and their player numbers on the field. So our apologies to some of the fans back home. We do have 40+ teams in this tournament, over 500 athletes, and keeping track of each and every one is quite the task. So thanks for your patience. And, you know, again, a credit to having so many players here out in the field. 500 youth players.
It's incredible. That's awesome.
This is we talk about the sleeping giant awakening in USA Rugby and the different promos you see come out from USA and other organizations on YouTube. It's really rugby rising here.
Speaking of Eric Swab, he was the one just patting my head behind me here a second ago. Good to see Eric here and representing the Utah Lions. We were talking about you a second ago, Eric, about the PE classes you've been teaching over at Summit High School. So kudos to you. We'll have you in the booth later today and give us some words on your strategy and the state of affairs.
Right now, it looks like the strategy for Utah is just to get the ball to space. That is a magnificent hole taken here. That is their number 12, Spiff Cedric, Alex Cedric. Again, making it look too easy, going about 60 meters for the try. But it was the ball skills and that catch pass we talked about earlier, getting the ball to space and finding where that gap
Fundamentals.
was. So she had the option for a 2-on-1 on the outside. There was a big enough gap to take it through. And this is a player that will back her speed. She's a player that their coach has definitely highlighted. And, you know, depending what she does with school in the fall, I might take her to Australia for our Star Store.
You know what? I think you should.
It'd be a great learning experience. We see on the World Series right now players like Rico Ione from New Zealand, 17 years old, made the Olympic roster. When he, you know, 17 when he debuted, I should say. We had another player, Caroline Crossley from Canada, also 17 years old. The average age of the Australia team at one point was 22, and that's because they had some of their older players, Nicole Beck, one of their more veteran players, you know, that are pushing closer to their 30s. You know, so the Australia team quite young, largely populated with 19, 20-year-olds, and all growing up playing, you know, tag rugby and touch rugby. So, you know, exactly what happened here to score the try, finding the ball in space, being evasive, but, you know, having that willingness to pass the ball.
Rocky Mountain with the ball bounce out of bounds, out in touch.
we have a lineup forthcoming. And you know who else I should mention when we're talking about these young players is young Lily Durbin. Lily Durbin, a high school junior that was in residency at the Olympic Training Center. When she was finishing up this spring, was spending like a week in school, a week in California, a week in school, and it might have been a 2-week period. I'm sure that Jackie Finley with the breakdown could correct me there because she's written some magnificent profiles of all of our Olympic women athletes going to Rio 2016 with the rugby sevens team. So Lily was part of that training group and quite young. Michelle Stevens also came out last summer as a high school graduate, got offered a full-time contract with the OTC, so she deferred her her entry into Lindenwood University too. So starting to get that and identify these really young players. You know, we had the Youth Olympic Games where we had a lot of players go play over in China, both the men's and women's team from the USA, and of course this upcoming tournament in France. So they're going to get these international experience starting younger than ever before. It's kind of like the way we built our USA Soccer women's team. I mean, Mia Hamm, 14 years old.
It really is. You know, starting them young, getting them international experience, sending them all over the world to get that, not only that experience, but also just to be raised with those other athletes their age who grew up with the game, so they kind of get that chemistry built.
Well, I like this too. Like, you know, we're speaking of like, you know, young athletes and everything. We talked about the Rocky Mountain coach and how his daughter is playing on the team. So we have the sisters with Tessa Hahn and Carson Hahn. We have Maddie Haddon and Carly Haddon playing for Rocky Mountain too. So these rugby families, and Nina Falmasoli, who's not on the team, but I know her older brother Iniki. He actually played on one of our tours to Australia too. Member of the national champion Glendale Raptors team that won the 15s title for the PRP. So some of these girls growing up tackling their older brothers and everything and getting exposed to the sport young, having the parents out here. You know, you have these like legacy families too. Like look what the Swabs are doing. Look at what Mike Kressler's doing setting up this tournament. We have the Fury family here with the CODB program from Play Rugby USA, a big East Coast institution out there. Just fantastic now. You know, we're going to see, you know, talks of some of these fathers that are holding on to play with their sons on the field. We actually heard a few conversations of that up in Canada recently. And the same thing, mothers and daughters. And here is another break. This is Alex again, Spiff with another try.
Great awareness, taking advantage of the mistake and making them pay for it.
So this is certainly a hat track for Spiff, if not even more. Fantastic running. Utah Lions just showing Rocky Mountain how it's played. Both new programs, but just that additional, you know, training together constantly, you know, 5 times a week as a high school player on top of your own club experiences too. And they did say that when they did get into their spring season, they released all their players back to their home teams. So they're not training extra or demanding them or stealing them away from their home programs too. It's saying, okay, now you go play with your club, we'll strengthen rugby everywhere, and then come back again and ramp up and train again for the summer.
Right.
Rocky Mountain, very similar with their team makeup, drawing from so many different high schools from all around Colorado too. So game closing 41-0 to the Utah Lions, showing why they were in that championship form in Utah, their experience from playing in Canada, coming out and impressing in front of the home crowd here. Rocky Mountain going 0-2 on the day so far, but still plenty of rugby to be played, and they will, you know, survive tomorrow. We're in this round robin situation, so they still have 4 more games of rugby, getting valuable minutes here, playing with their short roster, just 10 players, and we'll see. I'm excited because I think that earlier in the day, Coach Daryl Lane made some fantastic adjustments in their game against Upright, and we'll see what they do elevating. I think they took on the 2 toughest teams in the tournament. Not to take anything away from Atlantis or Atavis either, but just knowing how much these teams in Utah and Upright have played together, they're looking like very strong as the tournament goes on.
Right, and it's not due to a lack of effort by any means. They've been playing really hard. They're great athletes.